Hello and welcome to EBRD's COVID-19 Resilience Framework, Environmental and Social Assessment Training Programme. This is Video 5, District Heating Sector. My name is Stuart Hume from Environmental and Social Advisory Services, or ESAS, and I'm a social specialist. Now, for the purpose of this video, I have a colleague, Mark McIntosh. Mark, could you please introduce yourself?
Hey Stuart, I'm Mark McIntosh, an environmental specialist with Claverton Associates. I'm a hydrogeologist by training and have worked in the environmental sector for about 25 years, working closely with EBRD many times over that and applying their performance requirements to their projects.
Thank you. Now, the purpose of this training video is to illustrate how EBRD's environmental and social policy and the accompanying performance requirements can be applied during an environmental and social assessment of a project within the district heating sector. And the example that we're going to use today is the construction and operation of a new combined heat and power plant. So let's now take a closer look at the project itself. Key facts. So the project involves the installation of a new combined heat and power plant within an existing steel plant. So it's the construction of a new facility within an existing industrial activity. Some existing structures will need to be demolished, and the new plant will generate electrical power and hot water for district heating from the steel plant's waste gases. Now, the new heat and power plant will eliminate the use of coal for district heating and reduce the quantity of electricity purchased from the national grid. The project includes upgrading the existing district heating water pipe network and refurbishing existing buildings to improve energy efficiency. And the project will also address the region's currently very high levels of air pollution. So now let's look at the application of the performance requirements to this particular project. So PR1, Assessment and Management of Environmental and Social Risks and Impacts. Well, PR1 always applies. This is classified as a Category B project, and a detailed environmental and social assessment was completed. PR2, Labour and Working Conditions. Well, PR2 applies as well due to the requirement for a workforce to be used during construction and also for the upgrade and refurbishment works, and in the future during operation of the combined heat and power plant. Now, there are going to be multiple contractors involved in this project during construction. And so contractor management is a key issue that will need to be addressed in the client's management system. PR3, Resource Efficiency and Pollution Prevention and Control. So Mark, why does PR3 apply to this specific project?
PR3 applies because it's going to be dealing with significant air emissions, noise, and the use of pollution prevention control technology to treat the waste gases. Importantly, to ensure it complies with EU directives on industrial emissions and applies best available technology. This is complicated also by the fact it's within the existing steelworks, and therefore there's an overlapping element of resource efficiency and pollution prevention and control associated with the steelworks.
Thank you. So in relation to PR4, Health, Safety and Security, well, PR4 applies as well from the use of project road vehicles on the public network, potential hazards to the workforce for the construction, upgrade and refurbishment works. There's the potential for asbestos-containing materials to be present within demolished structures. And there's also community health and safety risks associated with construction and refurbishment works outside of the actual industrial facility where pumping stations and other components of the district heating system are present. So PR5, land acquisition, restrictions on land use and involuntary resettlement. Well, PR5 applies as well because while the majority of the construction upgrade and refurbishment works will take place within the physical boundary of the existing steelworks, there will still be temporary restrictions on access during refurbishment of the existing district heating water pipe network outside the industrial facility. PR6, Biodiversity Conservation and Sustainable Management of Living Natural Resources. Well, PR6 didn't apply to the project because there were no anticipated impacts to biodiversity from the project. PR7, Indigenous Peoples. Well, PR7 didn't apply because there are no people in the project area that meet the PR7 applicability criteria. PR8 definitely applies, cultural heritage, because the project involves excavations during the refurbishment works, and so there's the potential for archaeological artefacts to be damaged and a chance finds procedure will need to be in place. Now, in relation to PR10, information disclosure and stakeholder engagement, well, PR10 always applies. And in this project, a comprehensive public disclosure and consultation process was undertaken. Stakeholder concerns included temporary access restrictions during the refurbishment of the existing district heating water pipe network. And so people wanted to be informed as to what road closures and other areas would be restricted as the works were ongoing. So that's the applicability of the PRs to the project. And what we will do now is explore the application of PR1, PR3 and PR10. And you can see there a photo of the kind of access restrictions that will take place. So you can see that there's a fence surrounding the area where the district heating pipes are being replaced. So that's a good example of community health and safety control by having the physical barriers present. But of course, in this area of open land, the local people living nearby wanted to be informed as to when these access restrictions would be in place and how long they would last for. So the training video takes the normal 3-task approach to any environmental and social assessment. So task 1, the review of existing documentation. A variety of information was requested from the client. So in relation to PR1, assessment and management of environmental and social risks and impacts, what was critical to understand from the start is that the existing steelworks is classified as an associated facility because the actual project is relying upon the waste gases from the existing operational steel plant. And so the information requested included details of the environmental and social management system, the policies, the procedures, the individual management plans for the new project under construction, but also for the existing steelworks. Now, Mark, in relation to PR3, resource efficiency and pollution prevention and control, please take us through the types of information that was requested from the client.
The information requested for PR3 was quite complex due to the fact, as you mentioned, that this is on an existing steel plant, which is the associated facility. Therefore, there's a host of information available and which we requested to understand the site setting and the current environmental impacts. We asked for the environmental monitoring reports around air quality, noise and wastewater, particularly for air quality to understand the ambient air quality in the area. We asked for the resource and emissions inventory, the annual greenhouse gas calculations, and importantly, the method statement they were using to calculate the greenhouse gases to ensure it complied with what EBRD required. We assessed how they were applying best available techniques and the assessments to prove that. Asked for details on their integrated environmental permit, which fits under the EU's integrated pollution prevention and control framework, and to assess how the project fitted within the greater power steel plant system. We also asked about soil and groundwater investigations or monitoring of the groundwater, particularly around where the project was going to be installed. Whether there'd been any hazardous material surveys, such as asbestos surveys, which needed to be considered when the plant was installed, and therefore buildings could have been demolished.
So in relation to PR10, information disclosure and stakeholder engagement, The information requested from the client included their stakeholder engagement plan and details of their existing grievance mechanism. Recent records of stakeholder engagement activities were requested, along with a copy of the latest grievance register, to understand if any grievances had been recorded, their current status, and the actions taken by the client to resolve them. Now, during task 2, the site visit and discussions, additional information on the existing steelworks operations became clear. So they have an existing certified management system covering quality, environmental management, and health and safety. They had recently updated their policies, and critically, they've established a quality, health, safety, and environmental team with separate departments responsible for quality, environmental protection, and occupational health and safety. Now, the client's management system requires ongoing evaluation of environmental and social aspects, covering both their existing operations in relation to the steelworks and also their future investment program, which is covered by the combined heat and power plant. And the assessment that was undertaken for the existing steelworks was in line with IPPC permitting process. Now, the new combined heat and power plant will be a 50-50 joint venture. What is really also important to understand is that the construction and operation of the new combined heat and power plant will be managed by experienced and qualified personnel who are currently working on the steelworks. Now, that's really important because what we're trying to explain here is that an existing established management system is going to be adopted and applied to a new type of industrial activity using experienced and qualified personnel who are already familiar with the management system's policies and procedures. And in my view, this was a very sensible and low risk approach, rather than, for example, introducing an entirely different type of management system for the combined heat and power plant. So Mark, in relation to PR3, take us through some of the findings from the site visit and the discussions with key personnel.
Building on what you were saying about PR1 and the importance of this being a combined effort with the existing team from the steel plant, and therefore there was a strong overlap with all the controls around the pollution and prevention, which was tying very closely in with the steel plant. So a key part of our evaluation for this on the site visit was to understand that relationship, the interaction between how the actual new combined heat and power plant would perform in relation to the existing steel plant. So therefore it involved a detailed discussion on the site, again going back to the IPPC permitting documentation and their environmental monitoring data, and looking at how their resource efficiency would be improved as a whole by the new plant, and actually the impact it would have, the new plant would have, on the current air emissions from the existing steel plant. And looking at the project itself, we sought to seek out how the abatement technology, which was planned for the plant, and how it would be ensured it was aligned with EU sulfur dioxide and dust emission standards. Importantly, the plant itself, the steel plant, currently has an air quality monitoring system. And one of the things we sought to seek out during the actual visit was to understand how the current project's monitoring network could be aligned so it actually encompassed the new combined heat and power plant, and whether there would be a need for enhanced monitoring around that area, and how the results would be evaluated in the context of the greater monitoring on the whole plant, to understand how the teams looking after the combined heat and power plant would interface and report to and share data with the steel plant. The project will decrease greenhouse gas emissions because it is more efficient than the existing system which is replacing on the plant. And we wanted to find out how it would change the reporting requirements to EBRD. Now, EBRD requires projects to report on their greenhouse gas emissions if they're in excess of 100,000 tonnes. But it also requires them to report when there is a net change of more than 25,000 tonnes in a positive or negative manner. And in this situation, we were seeing a positive reduction in greenhouse gases due to the improved efficiency, the move away from burning coal from the steel plant to burning the off gases from the actual steel process. So overall, this was a very positive reporting requirement in terms of demonstrating that the investment from EBRD was reducing the greenhouse gases. We also wanted to evaluate how the project, which was sitting within the existing steel plant's footprint, went to have an impact on existing, current, or historical soil and groundwater contamination, and whether there was a need for a management plan to deal with that contamination and take it off-site to be disposed of or treated. We also wanted to evaluate how the wet flue gas desulfurization system, which would generate wastewater, would be dealt with. We knew there was an existing wastewater treatment plant on the steel works and into which this would be fed, and needed to evaluate whether it had the capacity and the technology to deal with this new wastewater stream which was needed to be treated. And as has been mentioned before, there was a concern about the fact that the demolition of some old existing structures could expose workers and require disposal techniques for hazardous materials, such as asbestos, but also items such as lead paint, hazardous chemicals, and where those wastes would be disposed of, and if there was a suitable identified waste disposal site which was acceptable for those. The site walkover is always an opportunity to appreciate how a company applies on the ground its environmental health and safety procedures.
Thank you, Mark. So in relation to PR10, information disclosure and stakeholder engagement, the site visit and discussions with key personnel was an excellent opportunity to explore the way in which information is being provided by the client to stakeholders, and also the way in which stakeholders have been engaged with during the various stages of the project. So, as you would imagine, the stakeholders include a variety of communities, both within the area of influence from existing air emissions, but also who are future users of the upgraded district heating network. And this included quite a large amount of different schools, health facilities and administration and other types of public buildings that were connected, as well as the community residents themselves. Now, a municipal environmental commission had been established to coordinate the project's engagement activities. And this included welcoming people onto the site for site visits, holding regular meetings in different communities, and ensuring the involvement of academic experts so that there was, if you like, an independent oversight associated with the client's future investment program. And during the site visit in task 2, the Municipal Environmental Commission was actually met, and the consultants undertaking the environmental and social assessment interviewed them with a series of questions about how effective the engagement had been from the client side. Now, following an interview with the client's representative for public affairs, it became clear that regular meetings in 6 surrounding local communities had been undertaken. School visits had also been organised. They had organised an annual public meeting to report back the current progress in improving air quality and reducing coal consumption. And that was all part of a broader media campaign that included local radio and national TV, and a promotional film had been made about the way in which the project was going to improve regional air pollution and at the same time increase the reliability of the district heating network. Now, interestingly, their stakeholder engagement program included technical, vocational and educational training opportunities, which included scholarships. And the focus of this was really on youth development, promoting students to study engineering and also improve the quality of the vocational training on offer amongst colleges and universities through the improvement of training facilities. The client also had an established grievance mechanism where anybody could raise a concern through phone, text, email, or even post mail. And there had been some grievances reported, specifically associated with noise from the existing steelworks and the level of dust, And there was also an incident where a public road was temporarily blocked by a spillage from a subcontractor's truck. And again, it's not necessarily about understanding the grievances and how they were caused, but also the steps that the client had taken to make sure that those grievances did not reoccur in the future. For example, by improving the way in which contractors inspect their vehicles before they leave the site when they are laden with materials. So Mark, in terms of the analysis and reporting using the EBRD format, take us through the gaps that were identified that needed to be included in the Environmental and Social Action Plan.
Thank you, Stuart. As has come out in the presentation, the environmental and social management systems at the client were very robust, and they also had a very experienced team to implement them, and there had been a lot of thought put into the new project. There were a few gaps we identified, which we included with the Environmental and Social Action Plan of our report. The first was just to consolidate and confirm they would establish an environmental and social management system, which was similar to the existing steelworks, and that would be applied to the new combined heat and power plant. The existing system we thought was very good, and therefore to apply it to the new plant made absolute sense, but we wanted that to be a condition that they would agree to. We asked them to prepare an air monitoring plan specifically for the new plant, which was aligned with the existing steelworks. This would enable EBRD to be able to track the performance of the new plant and understand it in the context of the existing steelworks emissions. The new site had little information on the condition of the soil and groundwater, and therefore there was a requirement to undertake an investigation before the site became a construction site to check for the presence of historical contamination, which may need to be taken into consideration during the planning for the initial earthworks. We asked them to prepare a community health and safety plan. This would cover the details of the excavations, temporary road deviations, traffic and transport issues they'd need to deal with, and how it would be managed safely. And this would take account of the stakeholder consultations they'd undertaken. We also asked them to prepare an asbestos management plan following evidence that asbestos was a key concern on the site, and this would be built into their demolition plan. Also, as has been highlighted, there was a potential for cultural heritage fines, and therefore we asked the client instigate a chance fines procedure and ensure that the earthworks contractor implemented it.
Great, thank you, Mark. And so finally then, let's just have another look about the application of the PRs to this specific project. Now, during the training video, we have focused on PR1, 3 and 10. But for example, PR2 will require some detailed evaluation given the amount of different contractors involved. And of course, PR5 still applies in relation to the temporary access restrictions that are to be in place. And so for this project, almost all of the PRs applied. So that's now the end of video 5 covering the district heating sector. I hope you've enjoyed the training video, and please refer to the additional resources that are available on the website.